Join CEO of ecoSPEARS Inc. and former NASA aerospace engineer Sergio Albino as he reimagines the future of environmentally friendly technology to change the world.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sergio Albino. I'm the CEO of ecoSPEARS, and today's topic, I'll be discussing utilizing NASA technology and innovation to clean the world. The NASA technology that we're talking about here is based out here in Florida, based in Kennedy Space Center. We'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through this talk, but it's really about leveraging the innovative technologies as well as the brilliant minds that are responsible for space exploration and bringing it down to Earth to help our world become cleaner and healing it from toxic contaminants that's prevalent and pervasive throughout the world. So without further ado, my name again is Sergio Albino. I'm the co-founder of ecoSPEARS. And my background is really not in environmental or chemistry. I'm a former NASA aerospace engineer, focused a lot of my work in thermal management and designed some payloads for the International Space Station program, the Space Shuttle program, as well as some small satellites and lunar rover programs. And it was in that lunar rover program that I participated in as a thermal engineer, where I met the team that actually invented some of the technologies that we have come to license exclusively through ecoSPEARS and NASA. So, you know, part of being in NASA and also as an entrepreneur, you have to look at really, I feel like my biggest contribution to the world in a sense of is my ability to recognize technology from different sectors and being able to impact or to pivot it to other sectors to impact that the other sectors such as environmental or environmental remediation with technologies from other arenas, and hopefully creating a global impact and as well as advancing NASA technologies that may just be sitting on shelves behind government buildings or inside government buildings. And to date, ecoSPEARS is about 3 years old since we've licensed the technology, and we're working now in different parts of the world, like in Washington State, here in Florida, California. We are about to have a project in Sweden, and upcoming projects in Hawaii and Guam as well. So lots of opportunities throughout the world with these toxic contamination. We wish they weren't around, but at least we are here to help kind of heal our environment and make the environment safer for public safety. So again, bringing the topic of bringing NASA technology back down to Earth, and the sole responsible person for this mission was Dr. Jackie Quinn. She's on the podium here on the left side, and it's an interesting story about Dr. Quinn, about a woman environmental engineer that discovered the ability of plastics to be able to be utilized to extract these toxic carcinogenous contamination from sediments before it became an issue and into public safety and the environment. And it was the ability of plastics to be utilized to absorb PCBs, DDT, dioxins, before they get into the benthic population, the little crustaceans there in the sediments, and before they move up the food chain into the fish, small fish and to bigger fish, and finally to the fish that we eat on our plate, and biomagnify and bioaccumulate along the process. So Dr. Quinn read this one paper one time of microplastics in the ocean about coming back and being tested with high levels of polychlorinated biphenyls. So it dawned on her that plastics are a great way of absorbing contaminants from water that's out in the environment. So she ran down to our local barbecue restaurant at the Kennedy Space Center grabbed a couple straws, and took our hair crimping iron. So again, this is where my belief, if we didn't have strong women environmental engineers with crimping irons, we would not have our SPEARS technology to date. She crimped the one side of the straw, filled it with ethanol reagent on the inside, and then crimped it again on the other side, and put in a solvent filled with water and PCBs. And lo and behold, after about a week or two, all of the contaminants were absorbed into the straw and into the reagent inside. And that was really the birth of the SPEARS technology that we are so known for today as part of ecoSPEARS, or what we call sorbent polymer extraction remediation system. The picture here on the right is one of the early NASA on-site pilot deployment where they're testing out the first generation of SPEARS technology at a utility industry pond that was contaminated with PCBs from transformer oils. So we'll move on to this next slide here. So again, discussing the major problem out in the industry or around the world, 94%, again, let that soak in, 94% of fish tissue sampled in US rivers and streams contains PCBs and dioxin contamination. You could actually make out the Mississippi River here and the Hudson River just based on the fish tissue sample that EPA has gathered. And what's bad about polychlorinated biphenyls is that it was originally invented in 1929 for its purpose to be dielectric and have really good thermal properties. And it was utilized quite a bit in the transformers and utility industry, as well as in paints and caulks for those same properties that made them great. The problem was when they discovered that PCBs are not only pervasive and persistent, but they're also carcinogens. So in 1979, US EPA finally banned PCBs from being manufactured and distributed in the US. And in 1981, there was actually a global ban for PCBs. But we still have this problem to date, even though we've been tackling this issue now for about 40, 50 years. And the issue just doesn't lie here in the United States. The issue is actually all over the world. So if you're inside an industrialized nation, the chances are, if you have factories or if you have electricity, you will have PCBs not only in your sediments, in your waterways, but also in the fish that you eat at your dinner table. So we're learning a lot about this now in the Baltic region, where they're predominantly a fish-consuming nations, that they have a lot of dioxin and PCBs issues. There's actually several research now of bottlenose whale dolphins and orcas that are going extinct because they are not able to reproduce because of these PCB contamination in their system. And the mother is passing on the PCB from mother to child through milk. So the problem really continues to persist, and it continues to evolve along the way, even though this chemical has been banned now for about 50 years. The UN, interestingly enough, the Stockholm Convention required all parties to eliminate PCBs by 2028. And to date, what they're doing a lot now is removing all of the PCB toxic transformer oils from being in use and replacing them with other types of oils that does not contain PCBs. It's 2020 now, and technically there's 8 more years left in this Stockholm Convention program. And let's just put it this way, they're a little bit behind the 8 ball when it comes down to solving the problem. And solving the problem of removing it from the environment and from use is not only the main issue, but the other issue, like the folks in other countries that the UN manages, sees also is that once they've stockpiled it, the only solution right now is to transport that contaminated oil to either Denmark or Germany or France, anywhere that they can basically incinerate the contamination. So you think about that, right? We're removing toxic contaminations from waterway and from land, and then we're putting it in shipping or trains, and now offsetting a lot of that contamination to now air pollution. And then when it finally gets to its destination, we're then again going to be incinerating, causing more pollution. So it's an ever revolving problem. And what we like to say here at ecoSPEARS is that we do not want to sacrifice clean air to have clean water or clean soil. So more on that in a little bit. I mentioned incineration, but the other issues to current remediation method, really, if you had to put a bad guy to it, is that the current remediation methods are very costly, right? It takes a lot of money to dig something up, especially if it's been spread around in the waterway, dewater it, and then transport it over a long distance. Sometimes countries in Southern African developing communities are paying somewhere in the price range of $2,000 to $3,000 per ton. Our clients in Hawaii are paying about $1,500 per ton, and they're shipping their contamination to mainland US. So it's not really a sustainable process. In the waterway sector, they have this other unique approach, which is what they call capping. I like to call it a Band-Aid fix, because what they actually like to do with capping is they take charcoal or granule activated charcoal, and then they distribute it into the sediment, into the waterway, to literally cover the contaminated area and absorb the PCBs from there. The only problem with that process or that solution is that it also suffocates the flora and fauna, and they don't really have a good understanding yet as far as will the PCBs escape the granule activated charcoal due to weathering long term. So the current remediation options, again, are cost effective. They're very costly, and they're very ineffective, and they are not green and sustainable. This is where our SPEARS technology comes in for the waterway. So back to Dr. Quinn and the straw conversation. To date, the current SPEARS technology look like these green spikes that we're so known for today. Again, SPEARS stands for Sorbent Polymer Extraction Remediation System. And it's basically a plastic, it's an alcohol-filled plastic container that's put into a mat liner that we then press into a waterway. And it's what we call a set and forget method, where once we press it into the waterway, and there'll be a lot of these mats in a waterway that's contaminated, they're left there to absorb the contamination like a sponge. Absorbing it into the plastic and finally into the ethanol inside, or the alcohol inside, will prevent the PCBs from getting into the benthic population, prevent it from getting into the fish, and preventing it from being consumed by humans. And that's really important because, you know, fish is really the perfect protein as population continues to grow around the world. So we're not only protecting the waterways, but we're also protecting future generation of food. The SPEARS is, again, NASA patented and developed, and ecoSPEARS is privileged enough to basically commercialize and continue to advance this technology. It cuts the cost for our clients quite a bit because it allows for us to provide an in situ solution that we are no longer transporting contaminated waste. The project timeline is drastically reduced because, again, there's no dig and haul and transportation. And then we actually destroy the contamination with another NASA technology via zero valent metal process as well as UV. So as we're destroying the molecules of the PCB, we're also not creating new CO2 that would go into the environment. And this is, of course, in alignment with UN SDGs out there. Primarily, what we like to focus on is life below water and clean water and sanitation, as well as good health and well-being. There's an impact here on climate as well. And we always like to strive for partnerships for these types of goals throughout the world because it is a big world. The issues are quite massive. and working with actually a potential United Nations Environmental Program project soon to be in Africa. It's just another way we can partner and leverage to impact more communities and a greater impact in the environment out there. So the clear focus for ecoSPEARS is what we like to say, we're ushering in the carbonless future of environmental remediation. Eventually, the process that we have developed of installing and removing these mats, as well as destroying the contaminants and then reusing the SPEARS technology further into the future, will consist of a lot of robotics and automation to allow for, one, reducing less workforce to be exposed to the contamination, but also have smart technologies with precise and very accurate insertion as well extraction methods, so that we can actually eliminate these persistent organic pollutants from the environment forever. Science and technology and the innovation of the future, ecoSPEARS, we like to basically build that innovation that cleans the world. It started with SPEARS for us. And to date, we have now developed other technologies like ultraviolet advanced oxidation peroxide for contaminated groundwater. That has also some great impacts towards COVID or coronavirus, as well as 1,4-dioxanes and other types of contaminants. And we always like to say, at the end of the day, innovation is really what's going to save our future. It's not looking for a new planet to live in, but it's really leveraging innovation to clean this current blue planet that we so known to love. And with that, I say thank you. This is Serge with ecoSPEARS.